Welcome to MetaPod, the podcast where we discuss operational execs and organizations that make and move stuff, and our common headaches, digital transformation, the forever labor shortage, and doing more with less. And now, the host of MetaPod, Ron Crabtree.
Welcome back, Meta friends, as we discuss the tariff tsunami and how to more easily navigate our new trade policies. For this episode, we're going to discuss what it takes to move any manufacturing operation. Many of the topics we'll discuss today can be implemented whether you are moving the operations across town, combining operations, or moving from one country to another. I have Neal McGee with us today, and Neal can share with you how he came to have the expertise to empower manufacturers to effectively change their manufacturing locations or suppliers. Can you share a little bit about yourself, Neal?
Sure, Kim. It's great to be here. I have spent my 40-year career in demand, supply, and manufacturing planning in S&LP. I participated in closings of over 30 plants and manufacturing plants to new locations in Mexico, Puerto Rico, Asia, and Europe. I even reversed the decision of a plant closure because I asked the right questions, and then it was determined it was not a good idea to close those plants. I've worked with large electrical, electronics, medical device, and consumer healthcare companies.
So, Neal, let's say an organization has made the decision to move their operations. Where does one start from there? What's next?
First, you need to assemble a team of the impacted parties. It's not about just logistics, transportation, and new warehouses. Whether it's in-house manufacturing or contract supplier with whom you've had long relationship, you must worry about moving the production process, quality, engineering support, and packaging without impacting the customer.
Wonderful. So, what are some of the issues there that you need to be aware of?
When the decision's made, there's going to be a lot of emotions and all parties involved. And you need to have open, frank discussions with all the operations, supply chain, quality, and engineering teams, and people on both locations, so that you can have a move with as minimal risk as possible.
Great. So, Neal, can you share with our audience your 3 recommended methods to relocate manufacturing and explain why you would choose one over the other?
The 3 methods that I've used quite a bit is one is you can start off with duplicating the process at a new site, start up new production, and then close the existing. And I'll get to more detail in a second. The second would be forecast demand and build ahead before transfer. So in the existing location, you're just building ahead and then you shut it down and then transfer. And then the third option would be dual source, ramp up and ramp down. So ramp down the production in the existing facility and then ramp up production in the new facility. So when you're duplicating the process, this is an option that has likely happened if you have an old site that is outdated or manual equipment, and the new location is upgraded to lower manufacturing cost or improved quality. It also should be considered if you have concerns about quality, labor, or sabotage issues in the closing site. This option allows the new site to ramp up production and resolve manufacturing procurement and quality issues while you're still have the backup of the old facility. This will ensure you can meet customer demand. It has the disadvantage of being more expensive because you've duplicated a lot of the manufacturing equipment.
Okay. Number 2, so you have forecast demand and build ahead before you transfer. What's that about, and when would you choose that?
Well, if you consider this method, you have to have spare capacity. So if your current plant, let's say, is running 85, 90%, you have limited capacity to build ahead, build extra inventory. But the intent, if you have available capacity, is you would build capacity in the existing plant so that you can store inventory during the transfer period. Of course, there's an inventory risk, because if you're estimating maybe a year ahead as to what inventory you're going to need for that future period, you have the old plant running and you might have the wrong mix. You could have not too much of one part number and not enough another one. At some point, you still have to pack up the equipment and move, because you set a date in which you're going to exit the old plant. And if you have not completed that ramp up of inventory, you have the risk of falling short.
So then you have your third one was dual source, ramp down, ramp up. What's that involve?
Okay, this process could allow new locations to get up to speed faster. Transfer the equipment where you have duplicate capacity. So if you have more than one manufacturing line in the original plant, transfer one line to the new location. That new location receives the equipment. They start production. They start to learn how to do it while the existing plant is still taking care of business with their other line. This works well and where you have manufacturing processes for each manufacturing item. You have more than one manufacturing process for each item. If not, you will have to go back to the, build ahead scenario. But if you have duplicate process, this is ideal, where you can move some of the equipment early into the new location and then have the original location continue to support production until the new location gets up to speed. This is my preferred method, to be honest with you, if you have that duplicate equipment.
Okay. And that makes sense. So it would be easier and maybe the least costly, right?
Yes.
So so what are some of the things that can go wrong and need to be anticipated? And then what else needs to be considered that our organizations often miss?
Well, one thing's for sure, something's gonna be missed and something's gonna go wrong. I mean, I moved a plant to Puerto Rico one time, and you had to worry about hurricanes and shipping the equipment down there. But first thing you wanna do after you get your team together, you have to start looking at things like, are your ERP and systems gonna talk to each other? Is this a brand new plant, or are you gonna move into another plant that is already part of the company network? So if it's a brand new plant, you've got all those system and IT issues you have to worry about, the past forecasts and things like that. What is the equipment transfer and validation time to new locations? Depending on the business you're in, if you're in medical device or something like that, you may have FDA requirements. You may have other specifications or quality boards that you have to, be responsible to, and to make sure that your new site gets up to speed with these new requirements. Training for production, warehouse, and engineering and quality personnel. Again, if it's a brand new site, all those people have to be trained. Incoming inspection, purchasing, procurement, all those issues are going to take some time to get going. That's why, again, if you have the option to have both plants running, that gives you a lot more flexibility, because, while the people are learning, you still have the other plant running. Unforeseen unforeseen damage or equipment, sabotage or shipping damage. I've seen equipment fall off of trucks, and
Oh.
yeah, I mean, it happens, and I've seen places where they've done sabotage. Sometimes you don't even know the sabotage is there until the receiving plant receives it. That's due diligence you have to do with the closing plant, is to make sure you're keeping an eye out for those things. Uh,
Wow.
it's going to take time for the new plant to meet old site efficiency and supply chain metrics like on time and full. That's reality. The new plant isn't going to hit the ground running. So you have to account for that in your inventory build ahead and things like that. The final issue that I always recommend, oh, and also when you're pulling this team together and when you start looking at the training that gets involved, that might be, and the project manager, that might be an area where you can bring in some, interim talent with the experience of doing this type of work, because chances are if you're moving to a new location and you're closing at the old location, you don't have a lot of people are going to step up and say, hey, I want to be the project manager for this, or, you're going to need some additional skill sets potentially in these areas.
That makes sense.
The final issue I kind of like to point out is when you're done, 6 months or so after the transfer is complete, I call it doing a postmortem. Do an autopsy on the project transfer. What were your objectives? Were the cost objectives met? Were the engineering process and quality issues greater? Were they greater than anticipated? The problems you had. What were the procurement challenges you had? So, especially in large organizations that have multiple plants and they do this on a regular basis, you may very well be moving a plant again in another year or two. So learn from this one so that next time you do it, you learn those lessons and what are the watch outs.
That's a really good advice. As you were talking, something just kind of occurred to me as you mentioned sabotage and things like that. And there's a lot of talk about moving from one country to maybe a different low-cost country with lower tariffs. That just made me think, wow, those businesses that are gonna lose the business, they're not gonna be very happy. What could be some of the things that are an issue for organizations in that? Have you ever experienced that?
Oh yes, I've seen sabotage. I mean, nothing that was really terrible or that you couldn't recover from. But it's, there's ways to damage equipment. There's a way to damage material you're moving, and people do it. It's usually one or two, it's individual things. It's not done. It's not like a big strike where it's a plant wide activity. But they do happen. So you have to have people keeping an eye on the old location. So when the product comes into the new location, you could lose a couple weeks because something's been damaged, in transit or in, when it left.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you. So we all know that often the best learning comes from failures, right? Can you share an example of a move that was disastrous and how could that disaster been avoided?
Yeah, and I had one product, and I'm gonna keep the names out of it to protect the innocent. Uh, it was a project that was to be a low-cost version of an existing program, and the plant that was, going to make it was able to meet all the targeted costs. It was a new product, but they knew how to make a very similar product. They knew how the manufacturing process or the sister plants as local nearby had the capabilities to make those manufacturing process. They had a milk run established with a strategic supplier that ran almost every day to buy components. So it was a well-oiled machine. This new product would have been, I'll call a supply chain guy's dream come true because everything would have been located locally with an existing program, existing milk run. Well, the decision was to move to a low cost location. The new low cost location had never made this type of product. They had to be trained on the manufacturing process, molding, stamping, and a few other manufacturing operations. They could do assembly, but you get into more complicated molding or stamping, they didn't know how to do it. But the decision was made to go there. Well, so they had to learn all those manufacturing products. That specialty manufacturer, component supplier that they had the milk run set up, they still had to be used because they had a unique process for the product. That lead time was increased fivefold. So now you have much more WIP in process, work in process, inventory in process, and you have just a longer lead time for everything. I argued against it. I said, I came up with the estimated value of inventory increase in WIP inventory and other risk I brought up to the attention of senior management. And eventually the financial controller came to me and said, Neal, you're right, but you're not going to win. This was a political decision to move to this location. And within 2 years, that program had gone bust. It was a total failure. Lots of inventory was written off. Equipment was written off because it couldn't be used again because the program was just canceled.
Wow.
So it was a total failure. And what it boils down to is when you make a move, make the move for the right decisions. Don't ever make a move for a political decision for politics. It doesn't pay off.
No, that's obvious. Wow, thanks for that story. And I just want to say thank you for your time today. Your insights are tremendous, and I'm sure our audience will get a lot of benefit from them. And is there anything else you'd like to share before we close?
No, it's nice to talk to you, Kim. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining MetaPod. For requests on topics or to ask questions, you can connect with Ron Crabtree 3 ways: via email at metapod@metaexperts.com, via LinkedIn, or by calling him directly at 734-425-1455, extension 103. Lastly, if you love the show, please consider leaving a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app. We truly appreciate all your support.